You hear about NATO all the time, right? It's constantly in the news, usually called the world's most powerful military alliance. But what does that really mean? What is NATO? How does it actually work? And why was it created in the first place? Well, let's get into it. At its core, the whole thing boils down to one simple, incredibly powerful promise. This idea of collective defense is the absolute bedrock of NATO. It's a commitment that has held these nations together for more than 75 years. And to really get why a promise that strong was even necessary, we've got to go back to the beginning. The story of NATO, well, it starts in the rubble and ashes of World War II, the deadliest conflict humanity has ever seen. Europe was just shattered, it was divided, and it was staring down a brand new, very intimidating threat from the East. So, by 1949, the Soviet Union was lowering what was called an Iron Curtain across the continent. In response, 12 nations got together to form a purely defensive alliance. The goal? Pretty straightforward, to prevent any further Soviet aggression. Things really heated up in 1955 when West Germany joined. That move prompted the Soviets to create their own rival alliance, the Warsaw Pact. And that, right there, set the stage for the Cold War that would last for decades. And here they are, the original 12. You've got a mix of European countries, a lot of them still literally rebuilding from the war, and they're joined by the United States and Canada from across the Atlantic. What they all had in common was this one powerful belief, that their own safety was completely tied to the safety of the whole group. Okay, so how do you take that shared belief, that feeling of we're in this together, and turn it into something with real teeth? Well, that brings us to the most famous, the most critical part of the whole North Atlantic Treaty, Article 5. The official term for this one-for-all, all-for-one promise is collective defense. It really is the cornerstone of the entire alliance. The idea is simple. If you attack one of us, you've attacked all of us. It's this spirit of solidarity that gives NATO all of its weight. And the language here is so clear and so direct. If any member gets attacked, every other member has to come to their aid. This was designed to send a crystal clear message to anyone who might be thinking of starting trouble. Don't even think about it. So this is the big question, isn't it? For all those decades during the Cold War, this promise was this massive deterrent hanging in the air. But has anyone ever actually had to pull the trigger on it? And the answer is yes. But, and this is the wild part, only one time. Just once in the alliance's entire 75-year history. And the context here is what makes this so remarkable. The one and only time Article 5 has been used wasn't because of a Soviet tank invasion, the very threat it was designed for. No, it was triggered by the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the United States. It's an incredible twist of history, right? An alliance built to deter a massive country was first activated by a group of terrorists. Less than 24 hours after the planes hit, NATO allies stood with the US and triggered their collective defense promise. But this is a super important point, and it's where a lot of people get mixed up. Triggering Article 5 doesn't mean every country automatically declares war and sends in the troops. The treaty says members will take actions deemed necessary. Think of it less like a single red button, and more like a whole toolkit of options. Each country gets to decide for itself how it will contribute. And you can really see that flexibility in action after 9/11. The support for the US came in all sorts of ways. Allies ramped up intelligence sharing, they gave access to their airspace and ports, and they even sent NATO radar planes to help patrol the skies over America. It was this whole coordinated package of support, not just a single military command. So that flexibility is a huge part of the alliance. But another massive piece of the puzzle is its ability to grow. I mean, we started with 12 members. Today there are 32. So how did that happen? Well, it's all thanks to something called NATO's open door policy. This policy comes straight from Article 10 of the original treaty. It basically says the door is open for any European country that can live up to the treaty's principles and, actually contribute to the security of the region. But, and this is a big but, getting through that door is a process. A country has to say it wants to join, then it has to get a formal invitation, and then an accession protocol has to be signed. And here's the real kicker. That protocol has to be approved and ratified by the government of every single existing member. That can take a long, long time. So let's trace that journey of growth. It all started back in 1949 with just those 12 countries. Then, fast forward to 1999. This was a game changer. You had countries that were literally part of the rival Warsaw Pact. They were on the other side of the Iron Curtain, now joining NATO. I mean, talk about a seismic shift in the security of Europe. And that door is still open. More recently, Russia's invasion of Ukraine led two historically neutral countries, Finland and Sweden, to join up, bringing us to 32 members today and proving the alliance is still very much a living, evolving thing. Okay, so we've got 32 different countries in the room. 32. How on earth do they agree on anything? The answer is one of the most important, and let's be honest, one of the most challenging parts of how NATO works: the rule of consensus. This right here is the North Atlantic Council, which is NATO's main political brain. And here's the crucial part. All decisions have to be made by consensus. There's no majority vote. Every single ally has to be on board for something to pass. Now, that means the discussions can be tough, for sure, but it also means when a decision is finally made, it has the full backing of the entire alliance. And all of this kind of brings the whole story full circle, doesn't it? From its birth during the Cold War to its evolution after, NATO today is facing a challenge that looks, well, surprisingly familiar. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, it was like a switch flipped. It completely changed the security game in Europe. In response, NATO has poured resources into beefing up its defenses all along its eastern border, from the Baltic Sea all the way down to the Black Sea. It's a real return to the alliance's original job: deterrence and collective defense. And this helps clear up a really critical question right now. Ukraine is a very close NATO partner, no doubt about it, but it is not a member. That means it isn't covered by that Article 5 one for all for one promise. Allies have said that Ukraine will join, eventually, but until that day comes, it just doesn't have the same immediate security guarantee that a full member had. So when you look back at its history, from the Cold War to fighting terrorism and now back to this renewed rivalry between major powers, you see an alliance that's been forced to reinvent itself over and over again. And that leaves us with a big question for the future. In a world where threats are always changing, from cyber attacks to conflict in space, how can an alliance that was born in 1949 keep adapting to stay relevant and keep its members safe?